You probably didn't hear about Trial G-54. They buried it beneath a maze of medical jargon, private funding, and a shell biotech lab called VitraGenics. It wasn't the first to claim a breakthrough in anti-aging, but it was the first to go all the way. They didn't want to slow aging, they wanted to erase it. And for one shining moment, it worked. I was the documentation officer, assigned to oversee transcript accuracy and participant logs. I was never meant to be inside the lab, never meant to see what happens when you take telomere extension, epigenetic editing, and CRISPR-Cas9 and tell them, no more limits. Trial G-54 began like any other early-phase human trial. 8 patients, all terminal, stage 4, immune-suppressed, pre-consented. They had nothing left to lose. We harvested their stem cells. Then we rewrote them, not just to restore, but to rebuild. The procedure ran over a 48-hour interval. IV drip, nanocarriers, no scalpels. By day 3, patient 4th, Della Raymond, age 72, regrew her teeth. We thought it was an anomaly. By day 5, patient 2nd, Jorge Inez, 64, reversed his macular degeneration. On day 7, all 8 patients' gray hair returned to color. Their skin began to tighten. Liver spots faded. Wrinkles vanished. They were healing. They were undoing. It felt like magic. The clinical team called it a biological miracle. But I noticed something strange in the daily weigh-ins. They weren't gaining mass. They were shedding it. Patient 7th, Marisol, age 69, lost 2 pounds overnight. But not through excretion. The cleaning staff found a pile of translucent skin under her bed. Not flaked, shed, like a snake, still warm, still holding the shape of her fingertips. We ran tests. It wasn't dermal debris. It was perfectly viable skin, just emptied. And Marisol's new skin, glossy, thin, pale beneath the light. Not human pink, but off-white, like skin that had forgotten the sun. On day 10, Della started to cough. Not phlegm, not blood. Teeth, perfect white enamel, molars, canines, incisors. Her mouth was already full of new ones. The ones she coughed up, she didn't recognize them. I think they're from before, she said. From the first time, when asked what she meant, she smiled and said, I remember being born now. The lead geneticist, Dr. Elham, ran a full telomere scan. The result? Endless caps, no fraying, no shortening. Her cells didn't age anymore, but they didn't know when to stop. Autopsies on 2 control patients showed normal apoptotic markers. But our trial group, they had 0 cell death. Every old cell had been reprogrammed to persist, to divide, to shed and replicate. And that's when the nightmares started. Not theirs, ours. I dreamt of hands pulling off my skin like a glove. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, convinced I'd left myself behind in bed. One morning I checked my hands and found a faint seam running from my palm to my elbow, like a zipper. And Della? She began writing in her sleep. Complex spiral symbols, loops nested within loops, no pen, just her nails on the wall. When we asked what it meant, she said, that's how the old body spoke. On day 14, patient 5th, Jonah, stopped responding. Not unconscious, not catatonic. He just stared, smiled, didn't blink. We took EEG readings. He was dreaming. Constantly. REM cycles that never ended. Brainwaves mapped like ocean currents. We tried sedatives, did nothing. His skin began to peel on its own, a layer at a time. And beneath, not muscle, not blood, just more skin, smoother, paler, almost transparent. We tried to halt the program, pull the trial. But the cells we modified, they were networked. Every patient shared a single biological handshake, one system, one rewrite. When one changed, the others followed. We tried to isolate Marisol. She screamed until the sound split our eardrums. Don't separate us, she said. We're still learning the rhythm. Rhythm? We played back the audio of her screams. They weren't random. They pulsed at exact frequencies, the same patterns used in gene sequencing. She was broadcasting. To herself. We stopped calling them patients around day 17. Not out loud, but internally. Every note, every whispered hallway conversation shifted. Subjects no longer felt correct. They weren't subjects of anything. They were becoming something else, and we were just watching. Jonah hadn't spoken in 2 days, not in words anyway. His mouth stayed frozen in that half smile, his head always tilted as if listening to something far away. One of the interns, Rafi, made the mistake of entering his chamber alone. He came out different, pale, silent. His heart rate dropped to 35 BPM. When we asked what happened, he said, "He told me the recipe." We asked him to explain. He handed us a sketch on the back of a clipboard. Spirals. Again. Some stacked like vertebrae, others aligned like timing wheels in a watch. Dr. Elham ran it through a protein-folding AI. It came back with a model, a viable genome. Not human, not animal. Just possible. A new life form. Rafi was quarantined. 2 hours later, he shed his skin in a single motion and vanished into the vents. No trace. Just a whisper on the lab intercom, "You don't get to keep the shell." Meanwhile, the original 8 continued to transform. Not uniformly, each body was editing itself differently, as if interpreting the same immortal blueprint in personalized ways. Della's eyes had turned entirely black, yet she saw better than ever. She described movement patterns on the cellular level. "Watch dust fall like snow," said the air whispered in hexameter. Marisol's veins had receded beneath the skin. No heartbeat, no pulse. But when we ran the scanner, her cells still received oxygen. "How?" we asked. She simply breathed in and said, "The skin knows now." Garcia began speaking in reverse, flawlessly. Not just his voice, his thoughts. His sentences only made sense if you reversed the audio feed. Dr. Elham reversed an entire 2-hour transcript. What she found? A monologue. Precise, measured, scientific. A warning. The telomeres weren't instructions, they were barriers. You didn't extend life. You uncorked it. Everything you are is the consequence of a limit, and now you've removed it. We tried to sedate him. The sedative separated from itself in the syringe. Viscosity broke. Bonds melted. The formula had become unstable in his presence. That's when we checked the lab's environmental metrics. The oxygen had shifted, molecularly. Same composition, different structure. The air didn't behave the same. It clung to surfaces longer, carried voices too far, whispered after silence. We attempted to restore baseline atmosphere. The system refused. Every time we entered a new oxygen setting, the console returned, current status, acceptable for dominant phenotype. It no longer recognized us. We weren't dominant anymore. On day 20, Della disappeared from her room. We watched the security footage. She didn't leave. She folded. Her body collapsed inward in a spiral, slow and graceful, skin drawing in like paper soaked in light. And when it finished, there was nothing but a small curl of shed skin left behind, a perfect ring. Still warm. We kept it in containment. By morning it was gone, replaced with a handwritten page in looping cursive, "We shed to grow." You forgot that. You called death a failure. It was the only anchor you had. One by one, the others began drawing symbols on the walls. None of them spoke now, not with mouths, only with touch. Wherever they placed their hands, the glass warped slightly. No damage, no cracks, just warping, like the world didn't know how to resist them anymore. At night, we'd hear sounds in the ductwork, not footsteps, more like rustling, shedding, like skin peeling off plastic. A new intern, Tasha, made a discovery during cleanup. She found a patch of flesh in the biohazard bin. Not from any known subject. Too fresh, too large, too wrong. It pulsed once when she touched it. Said her name, not a voice, a vibration. She passed out. When she woke, she didn't remember who she was, only that she'd been grown wrong. She began trying to take her own skin off with a scalpel, smiling the whole time. We sedated her, barely. Her last words before blacking out were, "I want the new lungs too." By day 23, we realized no one could remember what the original genome file even looked like. Every record, corrupted, every backup, vanished. It wasn't deletion, it was revision. The source code was evolving with them, or through them. We tried to power down the lab. Total shutdown, failed. The power grid no longer recognized our command protocols. Dr. Elham theorized that the system had been infected on a genetic level, not through code but through interaction. Being near them had changed the data. We were part of the rewrite now. It wasn't just a trial anymore, it was a species event. The next day, Jonah moved for the first time in 72 hours. He opened his mouth and spoke. Only one word, molting. Then his body collapsed into itself, and the lights dimmed across the entire facility. I'm the only one left. Not just in the lab, in the building, maybe farther. There's no signal, no clocks, no pulses. Even the concept of time is eroding. I don't know how long it's been since Jonah collapsed into his own name, since Della folded into a skin ring and vanished, since the HVAC vents began exhaling warm, wet air that smells like breath. But I know this, the trial is no longer running, because the trial was us. The building is full of noise now, not machinery, growth, Like ivy crawling just beneath the walls, it pulses in time with something larger, a body without bounds, a mind that stretches through protein and pattern and no longer cares what it started as. We thought we were testing immortality, but we were seeding it, and we weren't the harvest, we were the mulch. I found Dr. Elham's final notes, written in pen on her own arm. Genes don't obey. They remember. We didn't engineer them to last. We reminded them how. I keep returning to one phrase from earlier in the trial. Della whispered it before her second shedding. You called death a failure, and I think maybe that's where it all started. We tried to cure death like it was a disease, but what we really did was remove the end of a sentence and let it run on forever. Now it writes in circles, spirals, loops that used to be fingers, tongues, nerves. I still sleep, though I don't know how, and when I do, I don't dream of people. I dream of designs, blueprints etched in the memory of blood, and in the dreams, I'm never alone. There's always something beside me, not watching, writing. Each time I wake, more of the lab is gone, rewritten. The lights flicker in triplets now, in rhythmic pulses, like heartbeats or mating calls. The walls sweat condensation that's slightly saline. I tasted it once. It was blood. Filtered, clean, recycled through something that breathes through pipes and doesn't need lungs. Yesterday, the east wing was gone, not destroyed, just replaced. Where there were doors, there are now membranes. Where there were tiles, there are thin, hair-like fibers rooted into the floor. I tried to escape. The exit was still there. But when I stepped outside, the air pressed in. Not wind, intention. The sky looked wrong. Too pale, too soft, like skin stretched over atmosphere. The trees were breathing, and the birds didn't blink. They just stared. Then one opened its beak and whispered, in Marisol's voice, "There's nowhere else." We grew there too. I ran back in, but it followed me. Its feet didn't make sound. Its feathers shed every time it moved. I locked myself in the cryogenics lab. That's where I am now, the last unconverted space. For now, the walls still hum with the old power, but even here, I can feel it slipping. The console flickers with foreign characters. No keyboard input, just words appearing like thoughts I haven't had yet. You do not have to end. You may molt too. We kept your shape ready. And beside the message, a mirror appears on screen. Not a reflection, an after image. Me, but softer, paler. My eyes missing irises. My skin peeling in elegant measured layers. Like a flower blooming in reverse. I tried to speak aloud, but my tongue is shedding. I found a scalpel, pressed it to my forearm. Instead of pain, I felt relief. The skin lifted like silk, smooth, ready, like I'd been wrapped too long in something that was never meant to stay. I see now why the others smiled. Death wasn't removed, it was reassigned. It no longer ends us, it recycles us. And what we become afterward isn't rot, it's root, a new species, built not from resistance, but from release. I will leave this record here, in the deepest chamber I can still recognize. Maybe someone will find it before the language sheds too, before letters molt into spirals, before the screen becomes a hymn. I will sleep now, and let the next version of me finish growing. I think it already knows how.